Hey everyone, I'm Nora Crone. I'm a violist in New York City, co-founder of the TIL Project for String Players, and a musician's vocal dystonia recovery advocate. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing one of the most common pitfalls I come across in working with people recovering from dystonia, and that is the difficulty in recognizing and internalizing progress. Before we dive in, I just want to mention that if you're new here, you may wish to check out some of my previous videos where I explain more about the process that helped me recover from dystonia. I'll leave some links down below, but the short version is that through learning a system of playing called the TIL approach with a violinist named Sophie Till, I gradually changed my brain through movement and my symptoms slowly disappeared. After 2 years of regular lessons, I returned to professional playing, and now I have the great privilege of assisting others, primarily violists and violinists, in their recovery. So believe it or not, even during a successful recovery process with regular guidance, in my experience, it's quite common for people to feel and express a sense that nothing is changing. Now, while I would never expect someone to invest unlimited time and resources in an approach that isn't working, I'm often puzzled by these statements because they usually don't align with what I see as an outside observer. Someone will come in and play something that they couldn't the week before, or with far less dystonic movement, and then in the next breath say, it isn't getting any better. An important caveat here is that we need to have enough regular exposure to good and complete information in order to make this kind of recovery possible, which is why frequent guidance from someone trained in this approach is crucial. Without that support, it may well be that progress is elusive. However, having gone through the recovery process myself and spent plenty of time despairing over my supposed lack of progress, I have a few ideas about why it's hard to internalize a sense of improvement and what we can do to help ourselves. First off, especially in cases where the dystonic symptoms are fairly severe, the most visible progress in the early stages will probably be with everyday objects rather than with the instrument. If you're new to this channel, the phrase everyday objects probably won't make any sense. So if you're lost, I do recommend watching one or two of my previous videos first. But briefly, in this recovery process that I'm advocating, we begin by using our movement patterns with everyday objects as a blueprint for healthy movement on the instrument. And since the brain has fewer dystonic associations with everyday objects, we can often make more visible progress quickly on a water bottle or a broomstick than with the instrument or bow. One common area for surprisingly quick improvement in dystonic symptoms is with typing. Yet instead of taking this improvement away from the instrument as an encouraging sign that there is hope in changing the brain through sensible movement, we often end up dismissing these improvements as somehow irrelevant, which I think is a huge mistake. The second reason we often struggle to perceive improvement is that we're usually fixated on what still isn't working. And to a certain extent, this makes sense. How else are we going to improve? But if we think for a moment of dystonia recovery like working on a car, we understand that in order to get to an apparently simple result, I turn on the car, I put it in gear, and I drive down the highway, an enormous number of individual parts need to be functioning correctly together. We could spend months fixing the wiring of the car, let's say, and yet when we turn the key in the ignition, it still doesn't turn on. That doesn't mean that the work we did was pointless. In fact, it was probably a crucial step. It just wasn't sufficient by itself to fix a really complex problem. But if all we care about is whether the car turns on today, that progress will be invisible to us. Another impediment to perceiving progress in dystonia recovery is when, for any one of a number of reasons, there is a lot of jumping back and forth between what we call route A and route B. I made a video on the concept of route A and route B, which I'll link to below, but basically you can think of route A as the dystonic pathway with all of its habitual movement patterns, and route B as the new, non-dystonic route that we're constructing piece by piece. Now sometimes, as that new route B is being constructed, we still need to play or perform. And the thing to keep in mind is if the demands we're imposing on the brain exceed where we've gotten to in the recovery process, then the brain has no choice but to revert to route A. So someone may have learned and consolidated enough of route B to play simpler things quite successfully, but then they go to rehearsal and play Strauss and wonder why it isn't working. The last factor I want to bring up is the impact of structural concerns on the recovery process. So based on my personal experience and on my work with others, dystonic symptoms are often accompanied by structural instability in one or more areas of the body. Regaining that stability goes hand in hand with learning new patterns of movement since that instability is often, at least in part, instigated or exacerbated by our old movement patterns. The problem is that the more we rely on that old root A, either out of necessity or inattention or impatience, the less opportunity the body has to recover structural stability because it's constantly being compromised by our old habits. Okay, so now that we've outlined some reasons why it can be hard to perceive progress, I'd like to offer some ideas for how to get past this stumbling block. But first of all, I want to say that skepticism and wariness can be self-protective. I understand the pain many of us have experienced investing time, money, and hope in approaches that ultimately haven't resulted in sustained recovery. I'm also not saying that it's impossible to recover with a negative attitude. I was actually pretty gloomy a lot of the time. However, letting negative emotions cloud our analysis or whether the process is working makes it much more likely that we'll abandon it prematurely, and it certainly makes us much more miserable along the way. So, first idea for overcoming this pitfall: seek out precise and objective measures of progress. Are there certain baseline root B exercises or movements that you can evaluate dispassionately over weeks and months? Are areas of structural instability becoming more solid? Are there certain passages you can return to periodically with more root B logic each time and notice whether any aspects of them have improved? Would you be willing to take monthly videos of yourself? A reminder not to do this every day or even every week, since recovery is often pretty uneven. Second, it can be helpful to zoom out and reflect on what this whole approach to dystonia recovery is based on. First of all, the brain is plastic. It can change through intentional movement. That much has been scientifically proven. Second, if the intentional movements we use are sound, precisely because they're based on the same physical logic that we use in everyday life, those movements are a reliable bridge to better functioning. If the information sounds right and feels right in your body, that's a very important data point. Lastly, I'm not saying you should be cheerful or that dystonia recovery is easy or fun. Some people are able to embrace it as a difficult but important opportunity for growth, which can certainly help us weather the process when things get hard. But ultimately, it's okay to feel as frustrated and skeptical as you do if that's where you are right now. Just don't use those subjective feelings as a reason to give up if there's objective evidence against doing so. That's it for today. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it with anyone you think could benefit. If you want to know more about dystonia recovery, you need to subscribe to my channel. And if you want to know more about healthy string playing in general, you can also subscribe to the Till Project. I'm Nora Crone, and my website is www.noracrone.com. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next time.